Hi there. Welcome to the Grace PCA Mercy Minute podcast. I'm your host, Mark Winton, Associate Pastor of Mercy Ministry here at Grace Presbyterian. This month's episode, we really want to highlight our upcoming program, Surviving the Holidays, particularly that revolves around Grief Share. That program is going to happen on the 30th of July from 6:30 to 7:45 p.m. here in room 17 at the church. The reason why our Grief Share team wanted to do this program, first of all, surviving the holidays, why do it in July? One reason, if Walmart can sell Christmas decorations in July, we can talk about the holidays in July. And the other thing, particularly about the holidays, it is hard when you're in a season or episode or journey of grief. And if we prolonged this until the holidays, it might just be too difficult to discuss in that moment. So we were hoping that if we had this discussion in July, it would equip you now, give you things to think about now before you enter the holidays. And then typically the holidays are a really busy time, so would we have time to fit this into our calendars? The second reason why we wanted to do this for the church is really, I know there's a lot of people who are kind of interested and intrigued about Grief Share, but don't really know what it's all about. And this one standalone episode or format that we do, if you were to come and kind of check that out, it will kind of let you experience what Grief Share is all about, to see if this is something that you would really want to avail yourself when we roll this out again in September for the full 13 weeks. So it's kind of like a trial run, a test and see what Grief Share is all about and would it fit you and help you in your grief journey. Now, I don't want to talk about all of this for the next 20 or so minutes. So I brought two of my good friends, Ron Botdorf and Erica Hodgins. They're part of the original crew that, signed up to say, here, my Lord, send me. I'd love to be a Grief Share facilitator. They're dear friends to me personally, and we are just very grateful in our church to have them and their care and compassion, really their commitment to Grief Share, because we know that this affects really everybody in our church. So I'm just going to lead us in a guided conversation. I'm very grateful for both of you for who you are and just your willingness to help out with Grief Share and be a part of this podcast. So just thanks so much for being here. So I'll really just kind of start off with the first question. Let's just go with you, Erica. How did you first become familiar with the Grief Share ministry?
I was introduced through a friend. I had lost my husband about 18 months before I attended my first Grief Share session. And I just was in a really angry place. And it was long enough after the loss that I kind of felt disconnected and not really sure what to do with my grief. So I learned about it, looked it up online, and found the nearest meeting. And kind of what happens when you walk into a Grief Share session is usually there's some tables set up and you get maybe a name tag and a really small introduction. There's not a lot of pressure to talk, spill your guts, to tell your whole story. You're just welcomed in. It feels like there's a place for you there. And then each session has a video that is instructional. So you'll see several speakers talk and answer different questions. And then there's a short discussion afterwards. And then you also, a big piece of Grief Share is you get a participant guide, which is kind of looks like this. So with the three pieces of the video, the discussion, and the participant guide, you really get to learn what grief looks like and how to walk through it.
Great. And I think a big piece of just God's providence in all of this was just how you went through that once, kind of halfway through a previous running session at a church in Hutchinson.
Salina.
Salina. And then we're so impacted by it that you went back for the full iteration of that. And then in God's providence, moves you here to Lawrence, Kansas. And we're talking about starting a grief share program. And Erica is really this passionate, compassionate champion for the importance of grief share and how it can help. And so, anyway, it's just kind of cool. Your own personal story, your own personal journey, and now being used to help other people in their journeys and in their stories. So, maybe some more, either one of you, about just, you described kind of that grief share process, the video, some discussion, the journal. What are things that you appreciate about that process?
Well, I appreciate that it's really kind of based on good therapeutic model.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not, and then they add the scriptures, the Christian component, because they have a lot of Christian authors of this material. And it's very, very well done.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in the hospice business for 25 years, and I've been to lots of seminars, and it's top notch.
Yeah. And I'll brag on Ron here for just a second too. I probably should have shared this up front. So again, in God's providence, God's been working in Ron's life, equipping him to be a licensed clinical social worker in the hospice setting. So very familiar with death and dying, with grief recovery and support programs. And so just a compassion, a competence, a familiarity around that whole arena. And then again, you're here at Grace, and Grace is starting this, so you just very much a value-based asset. And just having that, I think that's one of the reasons why this session was so excited about starting Grief Shares is exactly what you said, Ron, that so many of the speakers in the videos are really solid, reputable Christian thinkers, teachers.
And a lot of them have been through the grief and loss process themselves, which really is important. You'll see them in the videos themselves sharing their stories. And it's just really awesome to see that and hear that.
Yeah. And then even within the videos themselves, you have obviously kind of the more speaker-like people, but then you have people just sharing their own stories who've participated in Grief Share. Anything else that you'd want to add to that, Erica?
One of the things that I really appreciate about Grief Share is just, it's really well designed. So you can, I think it was in session 8. So very much towards, there's 13 sessions. I walked into my first session in session 8. And one of the things I told them when they were talking about doing it at Grace was the relief. 10 minutes into sitting down and watching the video that I felt, it was just what my soul needed to kind of learn what to do. So you can come in the middle, you can repeat it. I still have my original book. They've updated it, but I will never get rid of this because you can still go back to it years later. And then it's very dynamic because everyone brings a different kind of loss. There's usually some losses are very fresh, some are multiple years down the road. There's multiple losses. There's, it's amazing to see how it touches each person, even though every situation's different.
Mm.
Yeah. And I especially enjoy that it creates a safe space to talk about grief and loss.
Sure.
Because everyone that's coming has experienced that.
Yeah, maybe I'm kind of ambushing you with this question, but just talk about in terms of, a group that starts in the beginning and kind of goes to the end. What kind of dynamics do you even see amongst that group as they kind of go through the Grief Share experience and programming?
Well, normally, everyone that comes is hesitant at the beginning. It's nothing that you really want to sit and have a long conversation about. So I think it's important to know that if all you do is came and listened to the videos, you will find it meaningful. But I do think if you stay, you just can't help but start to participate in the conversation as you get to know the other people in your group and hear their stories. And then you just find common things like this day's really hard, or this really weird thing hit me hard the other day. And just having a place, I've heard it said, grief demands a witness. So your grief share group becomes the witness to your grief. And it kind of takes the shame away.
It's huge.
Yeah, it's so huge.
And it really normalizes the grief process.
Yeah.
It allows people to say, this is a normal process that I'm going through. I'm not alone. There are other people that go through this process as well.
Yeah.
And then just, you guys do a great job as facilitators, just kind of understanding people's stories and then understanding people's either eagerness or reticence and wanting to share things without putting a lot of pressure on them to do so. But I think what you said, like, eventually it just naturally comes out because of the comfort of just being in that group and just the meaningful content and just processing that via your own story. I guess the next question, what kind of impact have you seen? So Grace, we've run 2 iterations of this. The first iteration we ran just for kind of the church internal. The second iteration, we were able to open that up to the community via the Grief Share website. But just kind of the impact, the general impact you've seen on participants who've been a part of the Grief Share training.
Well, I'm really excited because, when I see those individuals that have participated in church, those people, I have that connection, and they'll come up to me and talk to me and tell me things about how they're doing and that, how helpful the group was. And then some of them have even said, I'm going to take the group again the next time it's offered.
Yeah.
So, I think their grief is a process. It's a lifelong process. It's not a one time and you're done with grief. It comes back.
Yeah.
Different seasons, different times.
Sure.
So it's important. And so I think, having that opportunity for people to come again is perfect. Fine.
Yeah. And that impacts kind of somewhat a help for them in their own grief journey, their own grief process, but then even a church-wide impact of just feeling more connected, less isolated, which is definitely a thing that you've got to try and navigate and mitigate in the midst of grief. Anything you kind of wanted to add to that?
Your identity changes so much. Depending on the loss, but it definitely changes. So especially if you have a certain group of people that knew you before the loss and then they know you after the loss, you feel different. And so the connection you feel is pretty powerful. And like you said, when you see people later, I moved from the community that I originally did Grief Share in, but I still feel incredibly connected to my leaders and the people I went through it with. And then, from a participant perspective, as Ron said, it never ends. Grief never ends. It's with you for the rest of your life. And so I think you feel like less overwhelmed when it hits because you know what to do. Yeah. You kind of have some tools like, okay, this is a hard day. And you know how to make it through it without trying to just cling on and make it through. So, and then like when you see people who've been through Grief Share from like the first session to the end, you see there's laughter, there's a light back in their eyes. You kind of see like this confidence, like I can do this. Like I'm gonna make it.
Like thinking about the future, what the future might hold, and things that they might want to do. That's those sorts of things.
Yeah, that's a big impact
It is.
on a person. So what do you feel? Well, I'll just start with you, Erica. What do you feel like Grief Share has done just in your own relationship with Christ, and then how that's even given you confidence in befriending others experiencing grief?
Yeah, I think when I think of Grief Share, I think of like a life buoy. I mean, I kind of described earlier, but I was in a really angry place when I started Grief Share. And then I felt that kind of instant relief during the first meeting. I just felt overwhelmed and unsure. I knew, like throughout, I knew that Jesus was there and I was clinging on to my faith. But I think Grief Share gave me words and things to think about, things to untangle with Jesus. So that was really helpful to kind of work through it and not feel so stuck where I was. And then, of course, now that I have had that experience, I just want to run towards people in grief. It's like, I want to let them know that they don't have to let it drown them. You know, there's hope that people will be there to walk through them with it. And even the faith stuff, kind of the crisis of faith that you face with loss, just to normalize that it's going to test everything, you know. So I want to be that strong person, or that person that someone can look to and say, oh, well, there's living proof.
Sure.
She's made it. She's making it. There's still tough days, but she still has hope.
Yeah. And even just having confidence to want to enter into that versus a hesitancy, right?
Yeah.
Because you've seen it work in your own heart and in your own life, that you're not going to shout, oh, that could be too scary and too deep and too whatever.
Yeah. Because it is so, for so many people, it is uncomfortable. You don't know what to say. You don't know what might help, what might not be helpful. So yeah, I feel like going through Grief Share gives you confidence to kind of know where people are and how to listen and how to hold space.
Sure. Yep. And I think just another powerful thing you talked about was you knew Jesus was there, but now you were kind of, you know, maybe that you knew that propositionally, you knew that doctrinally, but then just how you described it, like, now I'm doing this with Jesus.
Yeah.
Like he's intimately involved and aware and present as I unravel these things. And then yet, as he's there, he's kind of through the Grief Share content and process, there's like a framework. There's you called it a buoy, not a framework, but that's an important thing.
It gives you,
when you're overwhelmed,
you feel so speechless. Like you don't even know what to say. You don't know what to pray. You don't know how to, the emotions you're feeling are so negative. And then there'll be times where things are completely happy and normal and life is going on around you normal. So yeah, it feels like, I wanted to work through it, but I didn't know how. And Grief Share, it's such a teacher. The material really does teach you, how to pray again, what to, where in scripture these things are discussed. And and then you hear other people's experiences. Right. And I just think you feel like you're a tangled knot and you get to kind of untangle it and having for me, that faith element was really important.
Sure. Yeah.
And such a big part of the healing process. So
good. Ron, anything you want to add to that, or any?
Well, my grief is a little different than Erica's. So, but we all go through grief a little differently.
Sure.
And so, but I think, a lot of the pieces impacted me as well, even though, my loss of a spouse is different than your loss. but it's something that you can still learn from,
Right.
and you can, help make sense of everything.
Yeah.
It really just helped to make sense.
Sure.
And Grief Share also does a really good job because, I had a positive relationship with the person I lost, but grief can be complicated.
It can be.
And we've had participants that had, really bad relationships and all the complicated emotions behind losing someone that was difficult to have in your life to begin with, or even suicide. They have some really good content and speakers from personal experience on the videos that delve into a loss from suicide. So it's almost like there's no thing that's too scary. Nothing's too hideous.
Right. Yeah. That they're going to talk about
They're
it.
going to talk about it.
They're going to talk about it. And then I think even, again, as we wrap up, just what we're doing here in July, talking about surviving the holidays, is there is a rawness to that, but then there's a practicality of it too, right? And that Grief Share would enter into that space knowing that that's just a difficult thing for people in the midst of their grief journey because of all of the memories and all of the expectations and all of these things that, I'm supposed to have so much joy around the holidays, but yet there's a real absence there. And Grief Share says, let's talk about that in an intentional and a meaningful way. So very grateful for the two of you, just your hearts for the gospel, your hearts for people, your willingness to just step into this, not just a podcast, but step into this process and the messiness of people's lives. And we're so glad you decided to tune in. We really hope if you're not familiar with Grief Share, if maybe you're on the fence and hesitant, again, this thing that we're doing on the 31st of July, 6:30 to 7:45 p.m., that's like super low commitment. That's super just come, check it out, see what it's like. You are going to learn something. It won't be the exact same of a Grief Share because, again, it's a standalone episode or program event, but it will give you a real good taste and a real good feel of what it's about. So we would just really encourage you for that. And then just the last thing I would just encourage us as a church. Yes, our church believes in the Grief Share process, the Grief Share curriculum. It's an important, tangible thing that we're doing to come alongside people. But we don't want you to think like, well, then I'm off the hook to come alongside people in compassionate and caring ways. If you've got any questions about what Grief Share is like, how it might benefit, by all means, hit up Ron, hit up Erica, come ask me. We're so grateful that you tuned in to this episode, and we hope that many of you will join us on the 31st of July. The Lord bless you and keep you. Thanks so much for tuning in.